thought we would go out in style. So we welcome you today to join us for a panel session with two astronauts, Mike Fincke and Chris Ferguson, and our very own Kavya, who will be moderating our session. So I'll give a brief introduction for you. Dr. Kavya Manyapu is a spacesuit lead in flight crew operations on the Starliner program at Boeing. She has been an active SGAC member since 2007. Kavya served as the regional coordinator for North, Central America, and the Caribbean region for 3 years from 2016 to 2019, and has participated as a moderator in several SGAC global events. Kavya gets to work with and train today's panelists to safely fly the Starliner to the ISS and back. So Kavya, over to you.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for the introduction. Hello, SpaceGen United and SGAC. I am really, really excited to be here with you today, along with our panelists, of course, virtually. I should say that we are entering a new era of spaceflight, and it's really exciting to be part of it and work with the first people who will be flying on our new commercial spacecraft. I am really thrilled to be moderating this panel today, and with these very special guests, two experienced astronauts who will be on Starliner's first crewed mission. We have Mike Fincke, a NASA astronaut, a veteran of 3 space flights, 2 Soyuz and 1 shuttle. He's flown on Expedition 9, 18, and STS-134, logged more than 381 days in space. When he flies on Starliner, Mike will actually be the first person since John Young to launch on 3 different rockets. That's pretty cool, Mike. He has performed 9 total spacewalks during his missions, logging nearly 49 hours outside station. He is a Pennsylvania native from Pittsburgh, graduate of MIT and Stanford, began a career in space systems engineering and flight testing for the US Air Force, selected as a NASA astronaut in 1999, speaks Russian and Japanese, and probably a little bit of Assamese, which is a native Indian language. Mike will be the NASA Joint Operations Commander on crewed flight test. We also have with us a very special guest and my boss, actually, Chris Ferguson, Boeing test pilot, astronaut, a 3-time shuttle astronaut. He flew on STS-115, STS-126, and the very last shuttle mission, STS-135, which he commanded and logged more than 40 days in space. Before NASA, Chris was a Navy captain and F-14 pilot, attended Top Gun. So for you all Top Gun fans out there, this is a real Tom Cruise you'll be listening from. He's a Philadelphia native, graduate of Drexel and Naval Postgraduate School. Chris joined Boeing after shuttle program to lead crew systems for Starliner. In 2018, he was named the Starliner commander for upcoming crewed flight test. Chris will actually be the first private citizen commanding an orbital spacecraft in history when we fly the crewed flight test of Starliner. Welcome, Mike and Chris. So happy to have you here, and we're really looking forward to hearing from you. And a few quick agenda items before we begin here. Mike and Chris will provide a presentation followed by a moderated Q&A session that I'll be moderating. And we will start with a few questions that we've received beforehand, and we'll also open it up for audience questions. With that, Mike and Chris, the floor is yours.
Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. Mike Fincke here, and I'll start sharing my screen, and Chris will be he'll be following to cover anything that I haven't talked about. Kavya, could you wave your hand if our screen is being shared here? Fantastic. Teamwork makes the dream work. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to represent the government astronauts, and Chris will talk about what it's like to be a commercial astronaut. These are new terms that we're using in the U.S. So that means my profession, I work at NASA. I'm a civil servant. Chris works for the Boeing company, and he's their chief astronaut, chief test pilot for the Starliner, and it's fantastic. Like Kavya said, this is a new thing. So we're going to share a little bit about the Starliner today, and I'm going to start out a little bit by saying what it means to for NASA and what we're doing. But basically, what we're believing at NASA, that every time we understand our universe a little bit more, we make life better. And this is a quick notional diagram. In the 1700s, electricity was a party trick, a parlor kind of thing where you could store some static electricity in a Leyden jar and shock your friends. It was fun for the time. Maxwell figured out the equations along with other folks. We then found practical uses for electricity. There's Edison and the light bulb, and now we have conquered the night on planet Earth. I think most people would say life is better on planet Earth because we've understood what electromagnetism is. And with that kind of knowledge, we're able to do amazing things as human beings. And one of them is to build the International Space Station. Chris was on the last shuttle flight, STS-135. I was on STS-134, second to last, where we installed the alpha magnetic spectrometer. You can see the picture that we took from STS-134, and you can even see the shuttle shadow on the side of the space station. But this is what we've done building things together. Only way to get to the space station right now is with Soyuz rocket. I got to do it twice. It's a really amazing rocket with an incredible capsule that has lots of capability, especially considering its humble beginnings. It's pretty amazing. But what we at NASA said, we want to have other options to get to the space station. And we want to use this new policy, a new way of doing it, instead of NASA just giving companies a lot of money and they give NASA a rocket or a spacecraft at the end. We'd rather have a partner with industry, and we would purchase services instead of hardware, and that would create broader opportunities for innovation. And I think both Boeing and SpaceX, our other partner with getting to space with astronauts, would agree. So this is part of U.S. space policy, and we're trying to expand our industry. So the Commercial Crew Program, we started it right after the last space shuttle. We had several different development processes, but now there's an official contract between Boeing and NASA and SpaceX and NASA. I was there on the contract award date. It was pretty amazing. We have a Starliner that sits on top of an Atlas V, and we also have SpaceX, which is a Crew Dragon on top of a Falcon 9. And as you know, our buddies Doug and Bob are aboard the space station right now, thanks to Dragon, and we'll be following soon in the Starliner. But this is the basic mission for Commercial Crew. But I want to point out, this is NASA's mission for the Starliner. Boeing has the opportunity to use the Starliner in any way that they really want to. Right now, we're the main customer. We're kind of the initial customer for Starliner, but it's NASA's hope, and I think Boeing's hope too, to get other customers out there and fly to different space stations than just the International Space Station. NASA's paving the way. We're helping along with the development and giving a solid mission, and that is to deliver and return 4 crew members to the International Space Station. Crewed return in case of emergency, so Starliner stays aboard the space station, kind of like the Soyuz does, to act as a lifeboat. It also is a safe haven if we need to evacuate station for up to 24 hours because there's a leak of something or some other emergency. We can hop into the Starliner and be nice and safe until we can re-enter the space station. And we need we want our crews aboard space station to be able to be up there for around 6 months or shorter. So we're asking for a dock time of 210 days, which is 6 months plus a little bit of margin. And that way NASA can schedule, along with our other International Space Station partners, we can schedule times to, different crew rotations to the space station, including with Soyuz and Starliner and the Dragon. So here's our SpaceX Dragon, Doug and Bob. They had a test mission. We're hoping to have them back in very early August, somewhere around August 1st, August 2nd. to return, splash down in the Atlantic Ocean. This was their launch, and we're really glad that they're up there. Our mission for the Starliner is very similar. We are going to go up to the space station, test out Starliner, make it help it to get certified from the NASA perspective, and then NASA certification will say soon afterwards we will have regular rotations using Starliner to the space station, and that's really good for NASA. And it's exciting to be part of a flight test team. You can see my colleague. There's Chris Ferguson. He's the tallest in the center. I guess I'm his right-hand man. And then there's Lieutenant Colonel, United States Marine Corps, Nicole Mann. She's an incredible test pilot. This will be her first mission, and she sends her greetings as well. So as in a bigger picture, NASA, we're moving forward because we can count on Boeing and SpaceX to take us to the International Space Station. We just buy the service from them. It's kind of like a rental car, a car hire, if you will. That way, NASA, we can focus on our Artemis program, which we're hoping to have boots on the moon by 2024. We're hoping that Artemis is an international program, but it's really a government, national level kind of program where commercial crew and Starliner, we're very happy just to get the service from Boeing. And that's going to open up an opportunity for more people to go to space, and not just professional government NASA astronauts, if you will, but other people could be able to go to space. And we're trying to do that so that we can bring down the cost and increase the frequency. Right now, 530 some people have been to space in one orbit. I'm very privileged and happy to be one of those people, and I know Chris feels the same. But we're hoping to at least by maybe 10 years from now to increase that by an order of magnitude. And I bet some of you would love to be those people that go into space. So we're pressing on, and it's inspirational. When I was very young, I was watching people walk on the moon. This is a picture of John Young, Apollo 16 saluting, and this really inspired me. I was a little kid once. I know it's hard to believe. I launched my very first model rocket. It was turned out to be a Soviet rocket, and it turns out 32 years later, I was actually on a very similar rocket with the Russians launching to space. So dreams can come true. And our dream and our inspiration at NASA is that we're hoping that we inspire new generations of young ladies and young men to go to the moon and to be excellent people in science, technology, engineering, and math. That provides great jobs for everybody. We're hoping to make life better on planet Earth, and we think it's better to be constructive than destructive. So space is a great outlet for humanity to show our talents and our skills. And we're working hard. Kavi is our instructor, but Chris and I, along with Nicole Mann, we're looking very forward to flying first flight of a new spacecraft. That only happens like once in a generation. And now, at least from the NASA perspective, we were focused on Starliner and Dragon, and now Artemis and Orion. It's a very exciting time. We think it's the space program is starting to enter a new golden age, and with lots of opportunities for growth, for people to participate in the space program, and a lot more people to go fly in space. And to close out and hand over to my colleague, Captain Chris Ferguson, I was commander of the space station on Expedition 18. He came up for a couple days and dropped off a whole bunch of cargo for us on STS-126. They did a fantastic job. I was glad to fly with Chris once, and I'm looking forward to flying with him again. Chris, over to you. What's it like to be training and getting ready for Starliner?
Hey, Mike. Hey, thank you very much. That was a great story. And we talked a little bit about the sort of the global aspect of human spaceflight right now. I think the International Space Station has certainly done an awful lot to bring all of the spacefaring nations together in space. And Spanky, right? We call Mike Spanky. It's his call sign, and that's what I typically refer to him as. But Spanky and I, we go back as he had said. But I do remember one fond story about him. I think Spanky, you were selected to be an astronaut in and about 1995. I'm sort of laying out there how the years have gone beyond us a little bit, but you joined NASA in 1995, and and you joined, I joined you in space, as you said, on STS-126 in 2008. And I'll never forget the first thing you said to me when you came aboard the space shuttle. You had said, "This is the first time I have ever been on a United States space shuttle." So you had been a U.S. astronaut for 13 years, and the first 13 years, of course, very engaged with the International Space Station development, launching of the initial modules, and acting as a crew member. So it was amazing to me that you had been an American astronaut for 13 years, and the only American spacecraft you had never been on until we joined each other in space. So that's my Spanky story, and I can still, even to this day, think it's compelling. All right, hey Kavya, why don't you go over to the charts, and maybe we can chat a little bit more in a little more detail about what the Starliner is all about. I think Spanky gave a great introduction in what commercial space is all about. The Starliner actually replaces a lot of the function that the space shuttle did. Its main job is to transport astronauts, up to 4 of them, actually 5 of them if you consider private astronauts, up to the International Space Station, where they'll live for up to 210 days. The Starliner will stay docked to the ISS the entire time to act as a lifeboat, just in case we should need to return quickly, which, by the way, has never happened in the 20-year history of human occupation of the International Space Station. And then the astronauts would get into the Starliner, and they would return back to one of our 4 selected landing sites that are right now in the Western United States. I am speaking to you in the image in the upper right. I'm speaking to you actually from what it used to be called OPF number 3. That's the 3rd Orbiter Processing Building. And matter of fact, I will take you on just a short tour because I have a really cool office, and I will be speaking to you from a window just to the right of the big garage. You see there's a small office building there, and I'm actually standing in the window, the upper window in that office building. And as I look out my window here, I see the vehicle assembly building. Okay, that iconic vehicle assembly building that we assembled all of the Apollo rockets that all went to the moon, and also all of the space shuttles. And it's getting ready to assemble SLS to launch us to the moon. And if I can stretch my camera over far enough, there you actually see another one of the orbiter processing buildings, which is right across what we call the crawler way. And in those 2 buildings over there is the X-37 Air Force program that Boeing manages, X-37. So the Kennedy Space Center has really turned into what I affectionately call the Wild West of space exploration now. In addition to the 3 programs that I just mentioned, we also have Blue Origin, putting a fairly substantial launch facility not too far away from where we're standing. And as Spanky had said, the SpaceX organization also launches out of here. So it's been a privilege to be a part of this. I've been a part of it for 8 years. That is the CEST 100 Starliner. But I come with a lot of shuttle experience, and it was really nice to be able to put my fingerprints all over a brand new spacecraft and sort of get to create it with a little bit of shuttle genre and a little bit of modern cockpit look. But it's turned out, and I think Spanky would agree, to be a very well-designed, robust vehicle that's going to serve, hopefully, the International Space Station for at least a decade to come. So why don't we go to the next chart, Kavya, and we'll talk a little bit more about each of the mission phases. As I mentioned, we do launch here at what is Cape Canaveral, so it's right across the river. It's the Canaveral Air Force Station, where Launch Complex 40 and 41 are. They were repurposed launch complexes that date back to the Titan program and the early Atlas programs before that. But we have taken over Launch Complex 41. SpaceX has taken over Launch Complex 40, and it's really it's a place where we launch military, commercial, and now soon to be human space flights. This launch pad actually dates back to the 50s, the 1950s, which was really the advent of non-human spaceflight and satellite spaceflight. So there's a lot of history involved, not only at the Kennedy Space Center here, but at the Cape Canaveral area as well. We launch on, as I said, an Atlas V booster rocket. Atlas V has a has a very successful history of since dating back since about 2002. I think we're approaching 90 successful flights on that Atlas booster and what's called the Centaur upper stage. The Atlas that we launch on is not very much unlike all of the Atlases that launch commercial and military payloads. There are some minor differences. One thing we have is what's called an emergency detection system. The booster rocket has a capability to monitor itself and send any information that would indicate detrimental performance to the Starliner on top, at what time the Starliner would actuate its launch escape system, and it would extricate itself away from a rocket that's disintegrating underneath it. That's a new capability that doesn't exist on current Atlases. Of course, we never plan to use it, but it is one of the safety hallmarks of the commercial crew program is what I like to refer to it as an ejection seat for a rocket. The booster fires for about 6 minutes, and then we separate and we make the rest of the trip up to low Earth orbit on the Centaur upper stage. The Centaur has one of the other substantive changes that was made to the Atlas V for our purposes, and we've gone from a single engine Centaur to a dual engine Centaur. That's a configuration that is flown many times on previous versions of the Atlas, but this is the first time it's flown on the Atlas V. As some of you are well aware, we conducted our first test flight back in December of last year. We accomplished a lot of test objectives. A significant one we did not accomplish, however, was docking with the International Space Station. So we are gearing up for one more uncrewed test flight of that to get that final test objective before the crew of Spanky, myself, and Nicole climb on board. Let's see, if you would just go back to the GIF file real quick, Kavya. All right, let's just talk a little bit about departure. Well, we have docking will occur about 24 hours after we launch, and then, as I said, we remain for 6 months, and then undock, and landing will be within 4 to 6 hours of undocking. And our 4 landing spots are in the Western United States, and the reason for that is we approach from west to east, and we have our service module that we'll have to deposit in the Pacific Ocean. So our landing spots are more suited to West Coast areas. 2 of them will be at the White Sands Missile Range, which has a lot of space history in and of itself. Another one is at the Army's Dugway Proving Ground up near Salt Lake City. And the final one is in a small remote town called Wilcox, Arizona. Okay, you can go one more copy. We are a true multi-location program. The Kennedy Space Center, of course, here in Florida is where we build our vehicles. The service module and the crew modules are built within a stone's throw of where I'm standing. We do, however, all of our training activity and mission operations all take place in the Houston area, which is the home to all of NASA's astronauts. In fact, our mission simulator that you can see on the upper left there is actually located right on the same footprint that the Space Shuttle mission simulator was located in for the duration of its training exercise. And the astronauts train there along with the mission operations team over in the famous Mission Control Center, the same Mission Control Center that controlled all the shuttle and Apollo missions, and of course the lunar missions. We have, in addition to a mission simulator, we have part task trainers. We sit through classroom instructional lectures. And in addition to learning about the spacecraft, of course, the prime mission of the crew is to learn about the International Space Station. So that is all dovetailed into the Starliner training. And after about 9 months of intensive training on Starliner and space station operations, the crew's ready to go. Next one. Just one more chart just to finish up to give you just some images that were taken from our test flight back in November. Of course, there's the Starliner on the launch pad with the crew access arm and what they call the White Room, or some people affectionately call the last place on Earth. And that is in the day just leading up to its launch. It was just a beautiful early morning launch that we had, and There was a single passenger on board, but that passenger didn't consume any oxygen or produce any CO2. It was an anatomical test dummy that we affectionately named Rosie. She went for the two-day mission, and she actually made a pinpoint landing out of her primary landing site, which was a very chilly morning, pre-dawn, out at the White Sands mission. So once we complete our uncrewed test flight, we'll be ready for Fincke and I and Nicole to take her up for a real test drive, and then we'll be ready after that for sustaining operations, where we'll likely be interwoven with our SpaceX partners in supplying launch service, passenger service to the International Space Station, which is amazing if you think about it. 100 years ago, nobody would have ever thought that we would be just easily drop into an airport and take off and safely go to any city in the world. And it does make you wonder, 100 years from now, will we have sort of a similar service to space where you can confidently and safely go to any one of space destinations, whether it be low Earth orbit, perhaps a permanent moon station, or an orbital station around the moon, or even to Mars. So, and by the way, it is Mars launching season, as every one of you, I'm sure, are well aware. Next week, we'll launch Mars 2020 aboard an Atlas V rocket, which is just outside the window here. So we're all looking forward to seeing that successful launch and its arrival on the Martian surface six months or so from now. Okay, let's see, Kavya, I think my time is up. I'll turn it back over to you, and I think there's a question or two for us.
Mike and Chris, thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's been really wonderful hearing from you. We actually have a bunch of astronaut aspirants on the viewer channel here, and I've been getting a lot of questions. I will start off with some questions we've received previously and then switch over to some of our YouTube questions here. So this question is for both Mike and Chris. What's been the best part about being on the first Starliner crew, and what's been something that's most challenging?
Mike, why don't you go first?
All right. So, yeah, so it's I really am impressed. Like Chris was saying, there's something really special about working and helping build a brand new spacecraft. You can put some influence onto it. You can help make things become a little bit better. I know the first shuttle astronauts felt that way, and 135 flights later, we were still doing a lot of the same things that Crippen and Young did on their very first space flight. So there's a joy to that. There's a joy to being on this crew. Chris Ferguson brings so much as the crew commander. Nicole brings the what do you say, the energy of a new person, and I like to think I contribute to the mission also. One of the things I like that I feel that I'm helping with is that Chris mentioned we have a lot of shuttle experience, a winged spacecraft like no other. Meanwhile, back in Soviet Union and Russia, we're working on the capsules, and there are some things you can do with a capsule and a more simple spacecraft. And sometimes going to the design principle of keeping it simple is important. And what we've done, I think, has been able to bring in some of the philosophy that we have from Soyuz and a capsule of, especially for getting out of tough situations. Not that Starliner would ever let us down, but on a bad day, I feel what I really like about Starliner, a beautiful spacecraft, is that we have many ways out of a bad situation by taking over manually. It's an automated spacecraft. Automation is beautiful. We can just hit the big red button at the beginning and find ourselves at the space station all automatically. Not exactly that easy, but we're getting close. But in the meantime, if anything goes not according to plan, and space is a dangerous environment, Starliner will get us home. We have many different ways of thinking of things on how to get out of any trouble. And I'm really appreciative of how Starliner can, all its great capabilities. Over to you, Chris.
So, Kavya, you had mentioned about commercial astronaut, and what does that really, what does it really mean? This is interesting. Our relationship. Yeah, 8 years ago, I wore the same flight suit as Mike. We all the the same boss signed our paycheck, and we were all just one big happy family. Now I've moved over and I work for Boeing. I'm a Boeing astronaut, but yet I train hand in hand alongside my NASA counterparts in a NASA facility. So it has, I think, really defined a little bit of what this, before we launch all the way over to purely private space flights, we're going to have an intertwined relationship with, up to this point, who has been the only purveyor of sort of launch services, and that is US and Russian astronauts and cosmonauts. But now there's sort of a third entity brought into all this, and we're essentially creating how I believe the future will work as we work integral with our NASA partner. And then, as Mike had alluded to earlier, the hope is that if we build it, will they come? And will we be able to secure strictly commercial-only missions where we have, whether it's corporations that have business interests or tourists that have tourism interests, and be able to, just as a Boeing crew, with maybe a Boeing pilot and 4 paying passengers, take them to an Earth orbit destination, which right now has a number of 1, right, the International Space Station. But we're hoping that that too grows as well, including grows into perhaps the commercial realm, because I know that NASA would like commercial orbital platforms from which they can use space. So this whole slow transition from a government-controlled program to a hybrid where both commercial companies and NASA are working hand in hand, and then eventually over entirely to commercial companies. We're at the foresight of that right now, and we're, I think, able to sort of set the stage for what we can expect in the next 10 or 20 years here.
Thank you, Mike and Chris. We have a question from YouTube by Ian Carter. What are the current lower and upper age limits for flights into space? How might this change in the future?
So let me start, so I think my answer will be shorter, Spanky. Boeing doesn't, right now, they have an astronaut because they hired a used one from NASA. But we don't really have an astronaut selection program, so therefore there are no criteria. Now that said, I became employed by NASA under certain NASA criteria, and maybe Spanky, you can take over and articulate. They're really not age restrictions, with the exception of maybe the youngest. But go ahead, Spanky. What do you say?
Yeah, so from the NASA, again, government astronauts, and Chris is absolutely correct. The private companies like Boeing can hire and fly whomever they choose. I think there's probably going to be some medical requirements like we do at NASA. And in fact, basically, there's no age requirements at NASA. On the younger side, it's more experience. How much can you bring to the team? It takes a little bit of time to get experience. So we typically hire people starting in their 30s and into their 40s. But there's also the time of as we get older, it's harder to pass the medical astronaut medicals. Chris and I we're lucky. We're in our, shall we say, early 50s, Chris, something like that. We're in our 50s, and every year we just are glad when the flight docs say we can keep flying in space. So it's really not an age limit, but it's really more about medical on the medical side. Again, we're trying to open it up so more people can fly in space. And again, we think for pilots and airplanes, the people flying the spacecraft are probably going to have higher medical limits like we do with commercial airliners. But passengers and spaceflight participants and private astronauts may have there might be a broader spectrum. But we'll see.
So you're telling us our SGAC community of young professionals and students have a good chance.
Well, we're working hard to build that opportunity for sure.
Awesome.
Not even just from a selection perspective, but they have a very good chance, because if you look at the number of vehicles that can carry astronauts to low Earth orbit, it has been sort of an N of maybe 3, right? We had the shuttle, we had Soyuz, and we had a sort of an infantile Chinese program. Now we've just seen that SpaceX has successfully done it. I would expect before too long we'll see Blue Origin do it. SLS is not too far behind. So we went from having very few launch capabilities to within the next decade or so, you're going to see that number double. So there's even more opportunities in space for that reason alone.
Thank you, Chris. Another question from YouTube. This is by Hendrika. Sorry if I'm butchering your name here, Hendrika. Hey, I wonder how commercial astronauts will spend their time during their flight. Will they also carry out scientific experiments?
That's a great question. When I first sort of signed on for this longer duration flight, you know, NASA sort of came to me and said, "Well, what will you be doing?" And I said, "Well, hey, while I'm there, you feed me, you take care of me. I will happily work for you." So I would imagine for the 6-month duration mission, I will now. This will be my 4th time to the International Space Station, so I sort of know my way around the block. But there has not been an awful lot from scientific payload perspective that I've been trained on. I'd like to think that my past experience and my long duration experience that's in front of me will prepare me. Mike will be looking over my shoulder to make sure I don't mess anything up. But I'm sure I'll be doing some science. I will also, I'm also trained on the space station's robotics. And you know what? There is always plenty to do in the International Space Station. I will be very, very busy, and I will eagerly work hard for my team. Let's put it that way.
And Chris, we're counting on you, man. You bring so much to the table. So we think we're going to get our shall we say our efforts worth. And again, it's great having you as a crewmate. So we'll and it's fun. You haven't done a super long duration mission before. Trust me, you'll be sad and happy too.
And Chris and Mike, we at Boeing and NASA are definitely looking forward to seeing both of you on orbit. We have another related question by Bryce Blackwell. Does astronaut training change based on if you are a commercial or government astronaut?
Spanky, you want to take a swing at that first, and then I'll jump in?
Yeah, sure. So astronaut training. So I can speak from the NASA perspective, right? We have a certain way to get people certified to be government or NASA astronauts, professional astronauts. That's our profession. So it's pretty detailed. On the commercial astronaut side, we've already had spaceflight participants fly to the space station. Many international partners, many, shall we say, very wealthy individuals. I myself flew with Richard Garriott and Charles Simoni, both individuals who wanted to go to space so much they spent small fortunes. We're bringing the price down, I hope. That's our goal. But what they did is they had a much smaller, they had to pass some basic medical requirements, and they had to get emergency safety training aboard the space station, both in Russia and in US. So yeah, the training is a lot smaller, and because the expectations for them are smaller. Chris is he has as much training as we do, so our expectations for Chris are going to be a lot higher. But it all depends on what the individual mission is for the commercial astronauts. Over to you, Chris.
So just talking in terms of how we're managing our flight, of course, we're sort of a joint team of 1 Boeing crew member and 2 NASA crew members. I'd like to say, to coin the expression, we leave our badges at the hatch. So when we climb in the vehicle for the simulation or any testing, we're all in this together, right? We all have one common goal, and that's to get to the International Space Station safely and get home again. So for that period of time, even though I work for the company that builds the rocket and ultimately is responsible for it, I sort of have to put a different hat on when we train together and think about things in terms of overall safety of the crew. The nice part about that is when we're done, if we discover something that should be fixed, because I work for the company, I can go back and have the appropriate influence to say, I'm sorry, we just have got to fix it. And it's actually worked out to be a very good relationship.
Thank you. Our next question is, how does the feedback loop work from crew members to system designers? Anything you've helped change that you kind of see as your feature or procedure?
Yes, Fincke, I'll start, and then you can go ahead and chime in. But I think I alluded a little bit to the answer in in the previous session, when we train together, we learn an awful lot, right? The software systems are very complex. Sometimes you don't always get the intended result, or you see something you don't expect. What we would do is we would confirm, in fact, that we've had an issue. We would go run it in a different environment, right? In what we call our ASIL, which is our Avionics System Software Integration Lab, which is like a full-up Starliner in an office building, and confirm that we, in fact, saw the problem that we thought we saw. Once that happens, we write a paper. It's called a problem report. And that problem report goes on to the flight software team, who in turn evaluates it against all of the other requirements and determines where it should be in the priority line to get fixed for the next flight. Similarly, if we have a hardware problem, we'll write what we call an NCR, a non-conformance report. And that too goes through a prioritization chain and gets assigned to an engineer who would perform the necessary corrective action. We implement the corrective action and we test it. So there is a very formal process, and young in a program like where we are right now, that process is very active. But that process will remain active for the entire length of the program. We would expect all of our problem reports for software and all of our non-conformance reports for hardware would slowly graduate down to a very predictable amount that we get from a flight-to-flight basis. But right now, because it's a system, it's a new system, we're working off what's called, a lot of these problems and a lot of the non-conformances. So that's sort of the closed loop process, how to get from a crew member and back to the engineering team to fix things. Spanky, I don't know if you have any insight.
Yeah, so from the NASA astronaut perspective, Chris, first, we're glad you're on the team, not just because you're awesome. Some people might, I would say you are, but because you can work through the Boeing process a little bit more efficiently than we can. We at NASA, we have to influence the process. We don't own the spacecraft like we did traditionally. So in the past, for Space Shuttle, I'm sure John Young could walk into a meeting and say, no, it has to be this way, and people would listen and feel obligated. For NASA astronauts, as we work with you, Chris, and you have helped us be a little bit badgeless, we can't tell Boeing what to do. It's very hard for us because you're providing us big picture things, and the details are up to you. And so I'm very glad that sometimes when we come up with good ideas or we notice things that aren't working the way we're expecting, we're able to influence and close that loop a little bit easier than the contractual paperwork may slow us down a little bit, so that it makes Starliner a better and safer spacecraft. And I appreciate Boeing's attention to that and allowing us to be part of that feedback loop.
Thank you. It looks like maybe we have time for 2 or 3 questions. The next one is from Florence Basubas. When will the crewed flight be for Starliner? Is there an estimated timeline?
So right now, we anticipate our next uncrewed flight to be in November. Of course, we're going to be success and safety oriented and not so much schedule oriented, but pending a successful outcome of that uncrewed test flight, we could anticipate a crewed test flight in the early spring of 2021. Again, it's highly dependent on how well we do on our second uncrewed flight. But if everything goes well, and we expect it to, we'll be up at the International Space Station by summer of next year.
Thanks, Chris. Next question by Charlie Gamblin. Hello from the UK. Great talk. How important do you think private sector involvement is in the evolution of human spaceflight?
Hey, Chris, I'd like to start with that real quick. It's really important. Charlie, hello. We'd like to think the model that we had with the airplane, where it started, the first flights were in airplanes, or 1903, like Chris said. 100 years later, we can fly anywhere across the planet for very low money and very, very safely. We'd like to say that we're doing the same thing with spacecraft and space travel. Airplanes, when they first started out, they were purely kind of government and military kind of things. We figured out what to do with them and how to make them safe. And now today, companies like Boeing produce many airplanes that are very safe for people to go across the planet. We're hoping the same. And Boeing's a private organization, not government sponsored for all of our development. And I think Airbus is the same, right? So we're trying to do the same thing. NASA is trying to encourage private industry. We take the first steps with the first people and getting the hardware started. But then later on, we're hoping that the private industry takes over. And certainly we're hoping at NASA that low Earth orbit becomes quite populated with a lot of private organizations, space stations, and ways to get there. And we are helping everything get started at the beginning to again, to help make a good future for us all.
So I'll respond by using an analogy I've used in the past, and it seems to sort of ring true. If you could sort of view the space around us and what is attainable in perhaps our lifetime. Of course, the moon is there. I think long duration presence on the moon is the next objective, and then ultimately Mars, right? I think we view, at least in our 100-year looking forward, maybe as Mars as the pinnacle of Mount Everest. In lieu of all that, expeditions that far away from Earth take a lot of logistical support. And that logistical support will come in the form of exclusively commercial companies that enable NASA to perform their exploration mission by providing astronauts to low Earth orbit, cargo, delivering their lander vehicles. So in a world that I would envision, in the next couple decades or so, you will see, as I had said earlier, commercial entities essentially take over the responsibility of getting stuff to low Earth orbit. And by stuff, I mean transportation for astronauts to destinations beyond, the cargo that it takes to support them logistically while they're in space, refueling capability so we don't have to throw away a spacecraft just because it ran out of gas. And then finally, the astronauts themselves. Again, so if you consider, Everest is Mars, low Earth orbit is the toehold that we will launch these expeditions from, and commercial companies will in effect be the Sherpas that carry everything that NASA and the exploration community needs to go perform their tasks. And we also hope to cultivate in low Earth orbit future businesses that I had mentioned, drug development. There's tourism as a potential. There is a lot of business that can be conducted there. The question is can we deliver the service safely and at a value that would entice these other companies to take this venture and build a shop in space?
It looks like that was the last question. Mike and Chris, it's been a real pleasure to be in conversation with you. Would you like to give any closing remarks?
Hey, yeah, I'll start, and then Chris, you can have the final word. I see a lot of our folks here today. We're all from the same planet right now, planet Earth, and I think you all, most of you, if not all of you, want to go fly in space, and I know that feeling. I still want to go fly in space too. Let's work together. Let's build a great future. Let's build a future that will help make us even more prosperous. We can take a lot of things off of planet Earth and take it to space, where it'll make our planet remake it the paradise that it is or has the potential to be. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of smart people, and it's going to take people that know the science, technology, engineering, and math behind it, people that can help us with policy, people that can help us with funding and knowing how our resources are allocated. So we're counting on you. We're counting on you to help us build a great future, a peaceful future where we can go explore the rest of the solar system together. I know as an American and as a member of NASA, where we want to work with everybody to help that. We've helped lead the way with the International Space Station, and we're looking forward to a really interesting and fun future together. So let's go explore.
By virtue of the fact that we're all here virtually today instead of in person, is because about 4 months ago something took over the planet that we just simply we could not anticipate. And you look at, as robust as life seems to be, it is still enormously fragile. And I don't think that we need to look any further than the fact that we're all sort of staying in our homes a lot more than we used to. It is the sort of mankind's capability to overcome problems and take challenges head on, I think is manifested in our ability to get to places like low Earth orbit, the moon, to be able to send probes that successfully land on Mars and poke around there for several years at a time. I think that they're very synergistic. We're going to face more challenges with a ever increasingly populated planet, and we're going to have to find ways to live peacefully with one another and solve the problems that afflict us, day in and day out, such as global warming, the one we're going through right now. And space exploration, I think, is an example of the types of things that we can do when the going gets tough, and we're going to manifest that across a lot of the problems that set the world in the future. So, hey, thank you, Kavya. I think on behalf of Mike and I, it was great spending some time with you. I'm sorry we are relatively holed up in our homes. We'd love to see you much more in person than virtually. But my guess is by next year, hopefully most of this will be behind us. Mike and I will be in space, and we'll get to talk to you in maybe another 2 years or so.
Mike and Chris, thank you so much for inspiring us today. And like you both said, we are a happy, unified family here on our planet Earth, looking forward to explore the next frontier out there. And we're really excited. And also, SGAC, our Space Generation team, we are a global family, and we are hoping that we are hoping to see that next generation of space leaders and trainers and astronauts from this entire team. And as a last slide, I would like to share this, and this is probably a surprise to Chris, but really it's an honor to be working with both of you and all of our entire Boeing and NASA teams. And to the SGAC family here, you can make dreams come true, just like Mike and Chris said. And it's been really fun as a new engineer to be able to work on the next generation spacecraft, and hope to see you guys, in the near future, whether it's at SGC or working on a space program together or from space. And with that, I would like to close this by saying, you can follow the Starliner journey at Boeing Space on Twitter. You can follow Chris at Astro_Ferg and Mike on Twitter at AstroIronMike. And hope you watch our upcoming orbital flight test this fall and the crew flight test early next year. Thank you so much, and over to you, Victoria.
Thank you very much, Kavya, Chris, Mike, for a really incredible session. I can't think of a better way for us to close our series of keynotes and panels this week of SpaceGen United. Thank you so much for your inspiring vision for the future of human exploration. We are looking forward to your flight next summer. We wish you every success in your endeavor. And now it's a word to the delegates. Let's take the words of encouragement and pursue our dreams in the space sector. To all the delegates, as you know, we have our next session coming up, the Space Trivia Night Quiz being hosted just after this session. So please look at the relevant links in your Google Calendar so that you can join us for that. Once again, thank you very much, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.